Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me okay and see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Thanks for the presentation. As Seba told you, I've been with the project for something over 6 years, and it's been a lot of fun all the time. With OWASP, besides working on SAMM, I also co-leading another project which is called Security Red, which is about automating security requirements and handling them in agile development. Besides working with OWASP, I have a day job as well. I work for a German mail provider where together with my team, I'm trying to make sure that our roughly 40 million customers are as secure as reasonably possible. And of course, we can always use some help both from security engineers and all other kinds of engineers, preferably with a solid security skills. Having said that, I joined the project in 2015, and that was kind of the time where when Seba and Bart took over the project, forked it from the original version of OpenSAMM from Pravier, and we started preparing the 1.1 release, which was then released 2016. And why I'm talking about that? Because by then, the work on the project was pretty much writing a document without any kind of automation or anything. And why that was an issue? Basically, if you go through the document, you see a lot of data blocks or text blocks which keep repeating. So here we have the example of a questions which which you can come across at least in 3 different places in the document. And basically, while moving from the version 1.0 to 1.1, where there were quite some alignments, we changed also quite a lot of this stuff. And when doing the QA on the document, we always found out that, okay, maybe we updated only 2 of the 3 spots, but forgot the 3rd one. So we fixed the 3rd one, and then we did a few more iterations. Then we found out that we are back to the original version due to some reasons, as basically all the feedback and the cycles were done by email. So people had a lot of different versions in their email boxes. So it was, I would say, the problem was quite complicated. It was really a lot of hidden work, I would say, to come up with a new version, which was kind of stable and without too many typos and so on. You can imagine it as working with the core model, which was like over 70 pages of PDF, then the how-to guide with over 40 pages of PDF. Then already by then we had, for instance, the Excel spreadsheet where again the same questions keep repeating, and it was really hard to make everything like this consistent. So with version 1.5, which then came 1 year later, we started consistently using GitHub for the changings, which already had a lot. So we were able to see who changed what and why, and fixed any issues way faster. But basically, our goal was to create a data model, let's call it. And that's something we did in our summit 2018, where the whole core team aligned of, okay, which kind of data entities are there, which data fields are in these entities, which should be populated, and where the direction is going. So once we figured that out, then obviously the idea was then to generate various documents and the tools from this data schema. The question is now how you make data schema, or how you parse the data schema on a platform like GitHub or in Git, where basically people can work with it and keep improving it. And what we did was that we persisted it as a set of YAML files. We chose YAML given that it was the, let's say, best trade-off between human and machine readability. So it's still rather easy for people, for the core team to work on the model, to keep updating the text questions, whichever entity is reasonable. And at the same time, basically in whatever platform you use, you always have some kind of YAML library, which then helps you process the data however you need. In case you haven't ever seen a YAML file, here is an example from one of the activities where you can see the model or the entity in action. So you can see that basically we have one file per activity or business functions, or basically per the entity instance, so let's go it that way. And then we have various fields which then show up in various let's say side products. Let it be the PDF, or there are also some more and more of them, and they keep adding up, I would say. So what we have, for instance, is the website where you can browse the model, as Seba and Bart show you right in the beginning of the project. We have basically the PDF. The PDF was basically the only deliverable we had for a couple of years and for a couple of versions, which was working pretty fine for some people, but not that well for others. We have the assessment spreadsheets, or there's since quite a few versions which organizations used to assess their state and so on, and this keeps adding on and on. So up until recently, we were doing everything in the GitHub organization under the umbrella of OWASP. So in case you haven't seen the OWASP organization, it's there are hundreds of projects. Basically, there are both the sides of the project, so the OWASP side, for instance, the website, meaning, and the repositories of the various projects. And basically, if you have a project, then you get your repository where you can then play with your projects. And this became for us more and more painful, let's say, due to various reasons. First is that you have various degree of freedom, or let's say limited degree of freedom in your own repository. So every now and then, if you need to change something, you need to reach to the parent OWASP organization, to the OWASP staff, and make sure that your request gets prioritized. At the same time, also within the repository itself, it kept growing and growing to the point where it was really difficult to oversee which stuff you find where. It was especially particularly difficult for people who wanted to contribute. So again, we had the YAML files, for instance, on various places. One the working versions, one the, let's say, versions from which we generated the website, and so on. So we spent quite some cycles in the last summit trying to figure out how do we move forward, what actually our requirements are of the projects, and the decision was, I would say, pretty clear, pretty to be expected. What we did is we founded the new GitHub organization, which you will find on the address github.com/OWASP-SAMM. And what you will find there are various repositories. So basically the project is now divided into separate subprojects. We started to call how this thing SAMM suite with particular SAMM projects. And here you can see, for instance, right in the middle of the screenshot, you can see the core model, which is basically the source of truth for the other projects. And then you see various projects which are then derived from the core model. So this is a huge help for us, because this allows us to say be again more transparent towards the community, towards everyone else, be more flexible with the handling of various projects. So we can, for instance, still say, okay, we have people maybe who are even not part of the core team, but are able to work on the SAMM project, on some, let's say, derived project, and still, let's say, profit from the visibility of the SAMM project as such. It also allows us to drive these various projects with different speeds. And I would say, especially on the core model, there are a few implications. The biggest ones are two of them. One thing is that we decided to switch to very strict semantic versioning. So if you're not familiar with semantic versioning, it's you might have seen it with various software. Is the major.minor.patch versioning, where basically patch, when we talk about the document, you could say patch is fixing typos or some minor issues, or maybe rephrasing some questions or text so that they become more understandable. Minor could involve new features, for instance, extending a model with things like mapping to other OWASP projects, for instance, mapping to various other compliance frameworks or similar, and major are then breaking changes. So as of now, we are using the versioning like SAMM 1.0, 1.1, 1.5 then we got to 2.0, and basically now we are switching it. So the core model, for instance, now is 2.0.0, then we have 2.0.1, and so on. What we also can't forget here is are the language versions, which are demanded by the community quite a bit, which make it maybe a bit more complicated. So what's important to understand that we can, while for instance with the English version, which is the source of truth for the whole project team, we can be, for instance, on version 2.1.0, for instance, with the other language versions like German or French or Spanish, we can lag some versions behind. Basically, the idea is that the community works on that with their own speed. So the say other language versions can come up to the same version way later than, for instance, the original English versions. It also means that, for instance, the various language versions can skip some releases or some versions, especially if we talk about the patch level, might not be relevant for the other language versions at all. So if we say, okay, we fixed 5 typos in English, then probably we didn't have them in other language versions, or we had various challenges. So this becomes more loosely coupled, I would say. Second thing is that what we changed was that we now switched to Git Flow quite strictly. So before that, it was something I would say rather homegrown and pragmatic, which was sometimes beneficial for the short-term wins, I would say, but really made it sometimes complicated. Okay, who can approve certain merge request or similar? So we decided to standardize it. We had a look at the common flows which are used. We desired to stick to some flow which is well known, so that we don't have to create all the documentation ourselves. And we ended up with the Git Flow as being the most suitable one for the project. So the Git Flow belongs to one of the robust ones, I would say, and that works pretty well with the project, given that nobody works on the projects 40 hours per week. It's not a full-time job, so this allows us to move with the project with the speed of the particular team members, and at the same time have, let's say, a robust review process, which is clearly very important, because in case we break anything, we now also break all the projects, or we might break all the projects which are depending on us. So we work, if you don't know Git Flow, basically where you keep everything happening is the develop branch. You do adjustments in the feature branches. Once you say you want to release, you create a release branch. You do all your testing of all the products, see if everything is okay. If it is, then you merge to the main branch and create a new tag with a new release, from which then other projects can also derive their own productive versions. if you do all of this manually, I would say that's also quite, let's say, a process which might still slow you down. So you obviously want to have some automation. I would say we didn't have to think too much which platform we will go with, given that the project is with GitHub and GitHub Actions, even or despite being rather new projects, has really great speed of adoptions, has all the features we need. So and makes all the thing pretty simple for the projects rather than having to rely to other platform like Travis or Circus AI or something similar. So it was quite easy decision to also stick to GitHub Actions. And if you haven't seen GitHub Actions, this is how it look like. For instance, one the file. So you basically define your triggers based on which happens and then what. The what is then defined as a series of jobs which you carry out. So for instance, this allow you to automate a lot of steps. What's great is also the availability of lots and lots of GitHub Actions which you can just take and use directly in your project. So that makes things really, really great, I would say. How do we then create or set up the interaction between the core model and the other projects? I would say for the sub-projects which are driven by the core team. And here you can see the example of the assessment spreadsheet. So basically what you can do is also in the GitHub to define your own questions. So this is very, very easy, basically just to create a manifest file, the action YAML. Then typically if you have some Python code, then you need to Dockerize it, but that's also it. So basically you created the whole creation of the particular deliverable as a GitHub action itself. You include the action as another step in your release job, for instance. And here you can see here is fixtures release 2.0.36 from our test projects. So here you can see that, for instance, the spreadsheet is generated and just added to the release assets as you know it from GitHub. So the idea is to do it either like for projects where it makes sense, like the Excel spreadsheets or the PDF document or similar. So just to attach the assets right to the release. For other derived projects, like for instance, the website, or if we decide to integrate, for instance, not only the let's say Excel spreadsheets, but the Google Docs in the cloud by APIs, just to deploy it into the cloud directly. So this is roughly how it works. Besides, let's say the sub-projects or derived projects, which are driven by the core team itself, we also have the freedom to have as many projects and SAMM organizations as we want, and there basically we can always decide case by case how do we want to integrate it. So do we just do some kind of webhook to the target Git and then either ignore it or do some manual stuff or automate something, or we include it here in the pipeline of the core document. So this is to be defined case by case. So where we are right now, we are right now almost done, I would say 95% with generation of the assessment spreadsheet. So now we are fixing bugs, and the next step is to put that live and attach to the release of the SAMM document. Then the next step is also do the same for the PDF generator. So in the same manner to let's say do the code which we use to generate PDF create it as a GitHub action, and then basically integrate with the pipeline of the core product. Besides that, we still didn't manage to quite or totally get rid of the old Git repository, so we still have open issues there. We rely on it to a certain degree, so we will be migrating that one, so that the goal is to say the old repository is now to be archived only for documentation purposes, and all the source of truth and everything is now in the new organization. The third big point we are working right now is figuring out how the translations will work. So we are working with a couple of possibilities where also we are kind of dependent what Crowdin enables. So how much do we want to automate ourselves versus on which features of Crowdin we can rely on. So this is something where we are process of figuring out. And if you feel passionate for any of these points or have your own ideas, so you're always welcome to get in touch and help us. And that would be what I wanted to tell you. And now I'm open for any questions you might have.
Okay, great. Thank you, Daniel. So if you're live in Zoom, feel free to use the chat or Q&A functionality to ask any questions, ask any remarks on the new GitHub structure. If you are seeing this on YouTube live, feel free to post your questions there. We'll be tracking those and relaying them here in the Zoom webinar. So far, Daniel, we haven't had any questions. Maybe from a practical point of view, is there any specific cut-off moment that will not be using the old repository anymore until we use the new repositories?
I'm not sure I understood the question.
Is there any cutoff moment? So we have the old repository, we have now the new repositories. So we will be archiving the old repository, if I'm understood correctly. But the idea is that we'll, from a certain point in time, we'll only be using the new repositories in the new organization.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think we have a particular date because it depends how much we manage to transition the issues to spread them across the new projects, to analyze if there is an impact of the translations. But I don't think we are too far from that moment.
Yeah.
So most of the work has been done already.
Yeah. We have a question from Larissa. Do I understand well that the new GitHub structure is not yet integrated with the OWASP SAMM website? I think it is, though.
It is, yeah. So the website as of now, starting last week, thanks to help of Felipe from Uruguay, is the source of truth is now in the new repository. So yes, whatever we change with the model will be directly shown on the website. Okay, yes, indeed, great. Yeah, and great help from Felipe, yes. So Larissa, to answer your question, we are actually, so what you're seeing on OWASP-SAMM.org comes from the latest OWASP-SAMM repository in the new organization. I'm looking if there's any other questions on YouTube. No, not for the moment. Any questions? We have some great comments. So thanks from Ryotaro from Japan. And so indeed, Larissa, that is true. So we have a question from Lisa. When I go to the OWASP-SAMM.org, I still get linked to the old GitHub. There are some old links that still need to be updated to the new GitHub repositories, Larissa. That's a fair point. So just to be clear on that, what you see, the OWASP website is generated from the new organization, from OWASP-SAMM on GitHub, but there are still some, and there are definitely still some pointers to the old repository that will be fixing in the next couple of days and weeks. It's a matter of the content of the website, so basically where the content where it's hard coded to the old repository. So it's the same case, for instance, for now for the spreadsheet. Yeah. Which is still pulled or points to the old repository. All right. So if there are no more other questions, I think we're right on time. Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you for listening.